go in here, turn this down too. Oh, hold on. Welcome back to the channel. Today's video is a highly requested video and one that I promised you guys I would do for a while. Today we're going to be going over Portal by Output, which is one of my favorite VSTs to use. We're going to be breaking down every part of it, how it works, how to use it, and then how to create your own presets for it. So an all-in-one, I was gonna split it into 2 videos, but I think I could do it in one while keeping it entertaining. At least I hope so. This video is not sponsored by Output at all, but the way that I'm about to talk about Portal is gonna make it sound like it is. Once you understand how to use it, what it could do, and you start like messing around creating your own presets, you're probably gonna understand why I'm saying this, and you might feel the same way, or I'm just in love with Portal, bro. All right, first thing we got to understand is what Portal actually is. Portal is a granular synthesis plugin that takes an input signal, then it breaks it up into grains and lets you control the size, shape, timing, and sound of those grains, then stack effects on top of that while being able to modulate every single parameter of the VST. So I think the best way to explain Portal in each part is when I'm going over each one, we'll look at the manual. I'll explain like the manual version of how they explain it. And then I'll try to explain it in like an easier way to understand with audio effects so you can really hear what's going on. So we have this area, which we're really going to go over later because none of these macros right now are linked to any parameters. So it's not really going to do anything. So this is kind of going to be after you've already sound designed something. So like I said, we'll come back to this later, but this is the front part. It is really cool and fun to look at, and even better later when you have something going on. Then we have our dry and wet knob right here, which is the overall dry and wet knob of Portal completely, and then a reverse knob again, which we could talk about later when we actually have something going on. Then up here we have all of our presets. These are the normal presets inside that come with Portal, and then you have your external banks. Right here is Strange, my bank for Portal. If you're watching this video, bro, check out Strange. I'll have a link to it in the description. Definitely had to mention that. But we're going to go ahead, exit out of here, and jump right into here, which is the main part and engine inside of Portal. It's a lot to look at, and I'm going to break it down into sections for you. So let's turn this one off so we can focus right here on grain controls, which is like the heart and soul of this and really what's going to start this grain process. So what Portal's going to do is look at the incoming signal. It's going to be referred to as the audio buffer. So to make this simple, I pulled up a vocal right here. This is what's going to be our audio buffer. This is going to be what's feeding into Portal, and then what we're telling it to snatch grains from, right? And how we want it to take those grains and what we want it to do with those grains that it's taking from this audio sample. So I have this vocal right here. Shout out to Tiandaland. And later in the video, I'm also going to show you it with a piano, but this vocal makes it very easy to hear certain parts like stretch and then grain delay. And since we could watch it follow along here on time, since this is a 4-bar sample, it's going to be really easy to understand what is going on. Portal is very dense, a whole bunch of things we got to go over to really understand what it does. But once you understand every part, you can get extremely creative with this. All right, so with Portal off, this is what the vocal sounds like.
Just a summer thing, just a fling, yeah.
So you can see our tempo's at 85 and the vocal sample's at 81, but it's time stretched to match. I don't know why I didn't just put it to 81. Anyways, you can hear that it's on time, right? So the first thing that we see is density. Density is how often the grains are sampled from the audio. So how often do we want Portal to go over here in the audio and take out little bits and parts to create grains from? Next, we have size. That's going to be the size of these grains. So if I were to have this way over here at 1 to 8, it's going to be very choppy, and I'll show you that in a second. If I bring it way up here to 4 to 1, we're going to get like a smeared effect where the grains are a lot longer and we start to get like a cool reverby smeared effect. But easiest way to think is all the way to the right, you're going to have more of a smeared sound. All the way to the left, you're going to have a very choppy sound. And then you'll see this link knob right here. So you'll start to notice that a lot of these things are synced or linked together or not if you decide to not link them. So they're all starting to play off each other. So what I mean by that is if we have it set 1 to 1, that means that the size is going to be equal to this density. So if we go ahead and put this at, let's say, a quarter note, right? We're going to hear a repetitive sound of just like a quarter note. It's going to snap right to the tempo. Let's bring this up and reset this again so we can fully hear it. So if I put the metronome on, you're going to see it's really following along at a quarter note because I have it sampling at a quarter note, and then the size is a 1 to 1, meaning that's just going to match up with that.
Just a summer thing, just a fling, yeah. Just a summer
Right, so we have a quarter note. Watch when I start to bring the size up.
yeah. Just a summer thing, just a fling, yeah. Just a summer thing, just a fling.
Then if I bring it down,
just a fling, yeah. Just a summer thing,
right? And we're hearing this at 100% wet. So we're hearing the full effect. The reason I'm doing that is to just explain these parameters to you. But if you want to hear your original sound, you can actually bring the grains down like this.
Just a summer thing, just a fling.
Let me make it a little bit more obvious. I'll go ahead and bring the octave up so you can hear like the octaves in the background and then the original.
Just a summer thing, just a fling.
And let's start to bring this up.
Just a fling, yeah. Just a summer thing, just a fling, just a fling, yeah. Just a summer.
Right, because we have, oh, I was gonna keep going. Because we have that size way bigger, it's bringing larger grains into it. It starts to smear the sound, which is cool. As mentioned, this video is not sponsored by Output. If you don't have it yet, but you're interested in getting it, I do have an affiliate link, which I'll leave in the description. I do earn a small commission at no extra cost to you. But of course, you don't have to use my link. You can just go straight to output.com and get Portal from there. The main part of this video is going to be teaching you how to use Portal and how to make your own preset banks. Let's get back into the video. So these two are going to play together. You can also unlink it and go by milliseconds if you want, but this is really just going to be a fraction of this. To give you an example of how these fractions work, let's reference the manual. So you see grain size ratio lock. Lock grain size to ratio of density. For example, if density is set to 1/4, which we do have it set to 1/4 here, and grain size is set 2:1, then the grain size will be equal to 1/2 note. So we got to do a little bit of math, a little bit of music theory in this. So right now it's 1:1. If we go ahead and bring this to 2:1, like it says, then it's two densities into one size, if that makes sense. So pretty much a quarter note plus a quarter note, which would equal a half note over here. So we have to times that density by 2. So it's going to be a quarter note plus a quarter note, which is a half note. So now we're saying that the grain size will be a half note. Do you need to fully understand that to use Portal? No, but the more you know, and I'm trying to break this down and make it all make sense, the more you can get very creative with this. So the next thing is the count, which is the number of grains being generated at one time. And we can choose anything from 1 all the way up to 16 grains being generated at one time. Then next we have this offset knob. That is going to be important for this count knob, because when the count knob is above 1, meaning if we go to 2 all the way up to 16, with this offset right here, this knob allows us to offset the start time of these additional grains. Like I said, you got to be above 1 in order to have this effect take place, right? Because we need more than 1 grain. But as we get up to like 4, 5, 6, 7, as long as it's above 1, anything from here, this offset knob will move the start time of the grains depending on how you want it. Again, you can sync it here with the sync button to the density and have it be a fraction of this, or you can have it be independent and go by milliseconds. As the additional grains are brought in, you can offset the start time. So as you can see, this just lets you really get creative. So not everything has to be on grid. And it's honestly kind of crazy how many different things you could do, right? Because you have all these different time units. You have at what point you want it to take samples, what size you want those samples to be. Then you have how many of those grains you want to be created. And then you can offset the start time of all of these grains, right? So that's like the main part of this. Then we have knobs that are a bit simpler to understand, like shape. You'll be able to hear this a lot later with the piano, but if we bring shape all the way to the left, we're going to get a sharper sound. And if we bring it all the way to the right, it's like a more smooth sound. Better to hear with an example. And then we have pitch and scale. So we can mess with the pitch and we can change this. I like to do octaves because it just keeps it in key, but you can go through here and choose all different types of scales all the way to free tuning and then mess with your pitch. Let me show you what that sounds like. We need to bring this down a little bit so we can hear the original, but let's say we want it to be in chromatic and go up by about 5. Now the grains are going to be pitched up by 5 and layered on top of the sample.
Just a summer thing, just a thing, just a thing, yeah.
Right? Like I said, I like to go ahead and just go to octaves because then it just makes it easy and you can get some real cool sounds just jumping octaves and staying in the same key that you're in. Now our grains are going to be up by 1 octave.
Just a summer thing, just a
Right? Or down by 1 octave,
Just a summer thing, just a thing.
which is cool. So pitch is really nice to mess with. I like to use it in octaves. Let's bring this all the way back up. Now let's jump into stretch and grain delay, which is pretty dense itself, but I'm going to try to make this pretty easy to understand. So next we got to talk about stretch. Stretch is going to control the playback speed of the audio buffer, which is exactly how the manual says it, I believe. But let's make that make sense. So this is the audio buffer, right? It is the sound we're feeding into Portal. When we start to mess with speed, what that's doing is slowing this down. So right now when it takes our grains, it's taking it from the normal audio, which has no stretching going on, right? And this is cool because depending where you put it, if we drop this down to 1/2, the grains that we're getting played back into our audio are actually going to be played at half the speed that they were snatched at, right? So hopefully that makes sense.
Just a summer thing, just a thing.
Now let's bring this down to half speed.
Just a summer thing.
And let's turn this down so you can hear the original in the background.
Just a summer thing, just a thing, just a
Right? Let's bring it all the way up.
Just a summer.
We're not hearing anything happening, right? But we start to stretch it and we start to slow down that audio buffer. And when it gets layered back on top, we're hearing that weird slowdown version. Then the next thing we have is the retrigger section. So this one has something that you can follow along with right here, which is pretty cool because this section is a bit hard to understand. If we look directly at the manual right here, the retrigger snaps the playhead at a synced rate to the current position in the audio buffer while being slowed down by stretch. If you don't have to read that 15 times to understand it, you are way better than me. So what does that mean? Well, this cool thing right here that's following along actually is pretty useful if you want to look at this and kind of see what it's doing. So we're like, all right, it's slowing it down and it's snapping it to different parts, right? Like I get that as the playhead is moving, which is this, or you can like imagine up here, this moving along, you know, we can have it snap to different parts in between or like bigger parts here when it's going to snap. So since we have a 4-bar loop going here, I'm going to set this to 4 bars here and watch this little line follow all the way along. It's 1 bar there, 2, halfway, 3 bars, 4 bars, snaps back, right? So with stretch on, we're controlling the speed of the grains, right? So right now we have it half speed, we're slowing them down. And then with retrigger, we're telling it where the set points are where we want it to restart pretty much. Best way to understand it again is to listen to it. So let's go half speed and let's start somewhere over here at like 2 bars. And as I bring this over, you're gonna really be able to hear what's happening.
Just a summer thing, just a thing, just a summer thing, just a thing, just a thing, just a summer thing, just a thing, just a thing, yeah, just a summer thing.
Right? We can't really hear it too much anymore because it's so fast. We start to slow it down. We're getting like a smeared sound again. Because this part is telling it where to retrigger, like where to hit that start point and go over. So when it's slower, we're really hearing that stretched out vocal be played before it restarts again. And when it's faster, it's kind of going so quick that you're not really hearing it because it's chopping and restarting so fast. So just imagine if it makes sense. I feel like no matter how many times I explain this, I'm trying my best to make all this make sense because we are talking about small grains of audio, but best case, I'll try to recap it real quick. This audio is being fed into Portal. We choose how often we want it to create a grain. We want the size of that grain. Then we want how many of those grains. Then we can affect the pitch of those grains if we want. We have panning left to right, which I haven't gone over yet, but these are panning left to right. We have the shape of the grains. And then if we want to offset the start of the grains that follow after, as long as we have more than 1 grain, the start points of those, we can move them over. Then we have stretch, which we can slow down those grains and like really do halftime grains. So it's like ooh, slower, right? And then when that start point is hitting on those stretch parts, and then the dry and wet amount of the grains. And then finally, we could talk about the grain delay, which is another dense topic, but I'll try to make it very easy to understand. So let's turn off stretch for now and let's talk about grain delay. Let's go into the manual, read what it is, and then I'll explain to you easily how to understand it. So grain delay, add time to the audio buffer, which is then fed back into the input of the granulator. So add delay to the audio buffer. Let's go with that first, right? So we got our audio buffer here. What we're going to do is add delay to it. So what this is, very easy to understand and hear if I just play it back. So right here, like I mentioned, we have a 4-bar loop, right? So if I move this all the way up to 1 bar, we're not going to hear anything happening until the 2nd bar, right? We are delaying the audio buffer by 1 bar, which is all the way to here. So you're not going to hear anything. And then boom, when it hits right here, you're going to hear it kick in. So let's go press play.
Just a summer thing, just a summer thing, just a thing.
Okay, so hopefully that makes sense and easy to hear. It's 1 bar. If I do half a bar, it's gonna kick in right here.
Just a summer thing.
Right, so that is introducing a delay in the audio buffer. The cool thing is we have this feedback knob. What this feedback knob is gonna allow us to do is once that kicks in, all of that signal, depending how much we want, we can feed it back in. We could feed those grains back into Portal and start to get this really cool washed out sound. And then we can high pass or low pass this, right? So watch, let me show you what this could do. Let's start to turn up this pretty high. I'm going to keep this at 1/2. You're going to hear it kick on here. Then this feedback knob is going to feed itself back into Portal and just give us this really cool sound that later you can mess around with stretch and grain delay together and get crazy sounds. So let's hear it.
Just a summer thing, just a summer thing, just a thing, just a summer.
Okay, let's try it again. Let's make this go crazy, and I'll try to filter it so you can hear it a little bit more.
Just a summer thing, just a summer thing, just a thing, just a thing.
Right? And watch when we start to bring this down how crazy this can get. Okay, now let's slow down those grains. So remember, now the grains are played at half speed. This is what it sounds like with the wet knob all the way up. That's all the stuff that's going on, right? And then we can blend it. Okay, so now we have made it through all of that, which I'm telling you, bro, it's about to be the longest Portal tutorial ever. But I really want you guys to be able to understand this because this is why it's one of my favorite plugins. So that done, we can move on to the next parts, which should be easier to explain. Now, we have modulation. So I'm going to explain this in a very easy, quick way to understand to hopefully not make this tutorial even longer and not go into a whole tutorial about modulation. So pretty much modulation is going to be a way for us to have different parameters move without us actually clicking it and moving them like this, right? So it can happen in the background. So right here, we create the type of shape that we want, right? So if we wanted the offset to kind of move like this, or whatever, we can create that pattern here. So we can double click, we can go down like that, right? So that would be, imagine the wheel moving. I want it to move up, then down, and then like slowly up like that after, right? So I'm creating that pattern here. Then we have the rate of how fast we want this to move, right? So it's going pretty fast like that with the modulation, but we could bring it down to like, I don't know, let's say 2 bars. We want it to kind of move up, boom, down, and go over and kind of move back up, right? So we're creating that pattern, and you can humanize it to make it not so harsh, but we won't talk about that for right now. Now we could take this modulation that we created and assign it somewhere. So we, boom, click this, and we say we want it on offset. I have to go over here and bring this up. So we have our starting point, then it moves and goes down. So you can see the white part following along, right? So as I mentioned, it's gonna go way up, down, and then it's gonna follow along with this graph. So we can bring this down here, and what it's gonna do, again, if I restart it, you see it goes up, down, and there. I can create these to do whatever I want to do. Go up, down, go there, back down, you can see that. And I can assign these modulations to anywhere I want. I can be on pitch, so I can set this to octaves, and I can bring this down, right? And it's going to move along with there and it's going to start to pitch things. But let's say you wanted it to move to the left and the right, not just like up and down, right? What you could do is assign this. I don't know why it unassigned itself. Click right here. Let me move this up so you can see it. So see, we're only going up or down, right? But if we want it to move both left and right or up and down, we can right click and set this to bipolar. Now it's moving in this range, so we can get it to go up and down according to how we want it to be, which is pretty cool. And you can also go down like this or have it start the other way if you move it here. So all I'm doing is dragging up and down. You see that crossover start to happen there, right? So you can just change these however you want to get the shapes and movement that you want. And you get 2 of these modulators. You could take this modulator and modulate this modulation, which is where Portal gets crazy and where I fell in love with it, right? Because then I can create something like this, and I can have this rate be extremely fast, and I can go over here and modulate this rate. And now, depending on how I have this set, which is insane because you can start to get crazy sounds, I can modulate the rate. So now pretty much what we're doing is we have, this looks insane to look at, this modulator going over here following a rate, right? Which we had set at what, 1 bar, but then I told this modulation to control the rate of that. So now it's like Inception, bro. Like now I have the red one controlling the rate of the yellow one, but the yellow one's assigned somewhere, which just makes this go insane. This is extremely hard to look at, so I just don't want to look at it anymore. So I'm going to unroute that. But yeah, you can get creative. You can modulate anything. One of my favorite things to do is have this set to 0 so nothing's happening, and then at the end make something happen. Let me show you something cool you could do. So we could actually turn this down, right? And let's unmodulate this. So there's nothing happening. So right here, I have nothing, 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 and then I tell it to turn on pretty fast. I can have it turn on immediately if I double click here. So pretty much I'm creating like an on and off switch, which is really fun because I can have it off. I'm not even going to try. There we go. Okay, cool. So off, 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 then on, and at what rate. So what I'm going to do is throw this on pitch, bring this up to where it'd be like 1 octave, and then it's going to be off, 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 and then randomly we're going to get a octave pitch up. So let's bring this up. Let me slow this down because we do have a lot going on. Let's turn these off so we could just hear it. So you're not going to hear any pitch happening, and then these grains right there are going to be pitched up. Let's start it.
Just a summer thing.
See? Just there.
Just a summer
And it just pitches there.
thing.
And you can see that little white movement go up. Boom. I can have it go down too.
Just a thing. Just a summer
Which is really cool. Then I can assign this mod wheel to the count, so the last part has even more. Right? Can even go to size. Right, so you can start to get creative with so many different things with the modulation. Then inside of effects, we have all these effects, which again can be modulated. We can turn these on. We can go with a simple reverb. If you're just throwing effects on it, it's cool, right? You can just have your normal effects, your reverbs, your delays, but Portal is really, I feel like the effects, you gotta modulate them, bro, at least a little bit, because you have these 2 mods where you can create all different types of things, and you can modulate any of these. I can modulate the dry and wet knob of the reverb, right? So I can have it be no reverb. So I take the white part, turn it all the way down, then take this red part and turn it all the way up, and then boom, you'll see once this sets in, bam, the dry and wet level change. So it's like 0 dry, 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 all the way wet, back off, right? Then I can go over here to something like a delay. So there's all these different types of effects in here. Even a chorus. Chorus is really cool too. One of my favorite ones to modulate because I can have like a little bit of chorus, right? This is the main level. Let's modulate it. And at the end, I'm going to turn it up. And then I'm also going to, I don't know, let's take this modulator and modulate this rate and get it sounding kind of crazy, right? So you're just going to start to see it moving there. Boom. It's moving around, but it's off this whole time. Well, it's not off. It's at like, I don't know, let's say like 13%, and then it's going to jump up. But we can turn it off if we want, so you'll hear it. So all the effects are off, then they jump on. Let's hear it.
Just a summer thing. Just a thing.
See what I'm saying?
Just a summer thing.
We could turn it up a little bit if we want a little bit of chorus on the beginning here and then have it jump up. But you could sit here and modulate anything. Like I could be like, okay, bring the depth up when that comes up at the end. So the cool thing is this depth right now, before the modulation happens is sitting at 50%. But when it turns on, I want the depth to go up to 60%. So you can start to get really intricate with so many different types of things. Let's listen to it.
Just a summer thing, just a thing, just a summer thing.
Let's turn these back on. See, now we're starting to get, you see what I'm saying? Portal's my favorite. Then we can bring this down, the whole overall dry and wet.
Just a summer thing, just a thing, just a thing, yeah.
And I didn't even think when I was creating this one, but you can imagine the ideas you can get. I'm going to show you with a piano. We're actually going to create a preset from scratch. This video is probably 4 hours long by now. We have a couple more things to get into real quick. So last couple things, let's make this fast. On the master channel right here, we have a compressor, which you can use, then an overall high pass and low pass for the whole thing. So we can cut out lows, we can filter out highs. We can also modulate these, which is one of my favorite things to do. And then because Portal can get crazy, I usually have a compressor on a little bit, maybe like 2 to 1, 4 to 1. And that's really just to kind of control what's going on. Then lastly, bro, we have our macros. So these macros are the ones in the beginning that I was talking about when we are looking at this part of Portal. These are ones that you actually have to control, right? So let's say you create a preset, you have all this modulation happening. It's happening by default, it's automated in the background, right? But you're like, you know what, for my preset, I want people to have the ability to add more reverb if they want to quickly with a macro. And I also want them to be able to control this stretch knob, right? So what I like to do is turn these all the way down. So then when people turn them up, they can kind of know what's happening and it's easy to understand. So this macro knob right here, right? We can go over to effects and let's say this macro knob, I want to assign to the size of the reverb. And then I can turn this up. So this purple knob, right? Since it's all the way down, our size is still at 50 where you see this white part, but I'm telling it how much I want this to control when it's at full. So if I start to turn this this first macro up, you're going to see that knob, that white part start to move up, right? So this is controlling that. So with setting this knob here, we're kind of just setting like the max amount. So if I wanted them to be able to like bring the reverb size all the way up, I'll just set it all the way up, have this one starting at 0, and then they can go ahead and move here. So we'll call this one reverb size, right? And then you can assign these to multiple things. I'll show you later when we make a preset. Let's show this one. We're going to call this started at 0. Let's assign this to shape and we'll turn that all the way up. Let's turn this one to offset. So we can turn this up so they have the ability to control the shape and like the offset of what's happening along with the reverb size, shape/time. Right? So now when someone goes here in the beginning and they open this up, when they're moving this around, those are starting to move around, which move around what you set in there, right? This is why it's even crazier because now you have macros that move things. Then you have the reverse knob, which is cool, which reverses the grains, which is even better because then you can get really creative with that. Let's switch over to the piano so you can kind of hear what's actually happening. So this is off. Start to bring this up. It's kind of hard, I can't lie. Let's mess with this. So we're increasing the reverb size. Now we're messing with the shape and time, right? So that's pretty cool. One cool thing to do is to assign some of these macros to like a pitch if you don't have a modulation happening, right? So let's just say we assigned it to pitch here and brought it down. Even though it's going to go up there, we can start to get creative with this. Turn down this if we wanted to. It's another thing you can have one of these control. We can undo this and have this macro just control the dry and wet knob of the grains. You could just get super creative. So with everything we went over, I completely forgot to mention 2 things inside of here. Number 1 is going to be these diamond shapes that you see here. These are randomized knobs. So it's actually really cool to use on this pan feature right here because if you start to bring this up, it's going to pan grains left to right randomly. You also have this randomized knob on pitch and over here on size as well as density. So utilizing these ones can just like add randomness. To be honest with you, I mostly utilize this on this pan feature right here, which I completely forgot to talk about because it's one of my favorite features, and it'll just pan random grains left to right amplified depending how much you want. Then the second thing I forgot to go over is the presets inside of the modulation. So one cool thing that you could do is cycle through presets here. If you want to just use preset envelopes that they've created inside of Portal, you can also click this right here to go into the presets folder and choose one. Then they have another thing right here of randomness, which you can click and it will generate random envelopes for you to use. So you can get different types of ideas here, and then you can just hit clear if you want to clear it. So hopefully that explained all the parts of Portal. I hope I can chop this up and make this like a faster tutorial, because now we're going to get into creating a preset with everything that we know, starting with this piano. Let's go. I'm not even gonna lie to you guys, bro. That was a lot to explain. It's so dense, and then like trying to explain it in an easy way to understand, it was challenging, bro. My brain's cooked a little bit. So I'm glad that we can now just create a preset. So I'm going to explain what I'm doing, but I'm just going to have fun and get creative with this. So let's jump into grain controls. We got fresh portal in front of us. Turn off stretch. I have a piano in the background so it can easily be heard. I'm going to turn the grains a little bit down so we can still hear the piano in the background, but I usually have this up pretty high. I'm not going to lie in my presets. And let's just start getting creative. Let's start off with density. Let's do like an eighth note to start. 1.5 to 1 is cool. Count, I want starting a bit higher. Then let's do stretch. Let's just have it on because I'm going to modulate it. Then let's start off with our modulation. So first thing first, I want to create, let's do that same thing. I want to have something that's like an on and off button. So maybe on this one here. So this will be off and then it turns on here. And then I'm going to have this one be one that's like, I don't know, maybe a little bit more crazy. So maybe we'll have this gradually turn on, then go up, something cool like that. So let's have this affect pitch. Let's turn this to octaves and go up by about 1 octave. Okay, we gotta move that down. Okay. 1 to 1 sounds better. Then let's create something more like crazy over here. I usually either go in with an idea or just get creative. Right now I feel like just getting creative. This one, let's have something like this. That looks cool. This is going to be maybe for the effects mainly. I want to change the shape when the pitch goes up. Make it more aggressive or softer. So then let's start. Cool, so it starts soft or aggressive, sorry, then goes softer. Like a smeared sound. Now let's get some grain delay in there. I don't want too much though. I want it to be maybe like a 16th note, so it's quick with some feedback like that. Maybe even faster though. Wait. What if we had this go here and then this goes down? Here, bring the feedback up. That's kind of cool. Effects, let's do, I honestly like bit reducer a lot because you could do this, watch. It gives us such a cool sound. So I start at like 0, right? And then bring this off or down a little bit so we don't hear too much of the noise, but then bring it up at the end. Just a little bit though. See how it gives it like a cool little sound to the end? That sounds cool. Then maybe a chorus. I do wish you can have more effects though, I'm not gonna lie. Depth down. This one's cool if you go here and go like this. And then put it to bipolar. We could do depth up. And then change that here. But only have this happen like towards the end mainly. Like this. Right now we're starting to get like a cool sound. So then what I want these macros to be able to do is control like the size and the offset of the grains, right? And that's where we can start to get real creative with like changing how it sounds, because right now it's pretty static. So this is going to bring, let's see, I want them to be faster. So let's bring it down like that. So if this gets brought up, the sample or how fast it's like snatching the samples is quicker. And then it's also going to control the offset. And I'll bring that up a little bit like that. And maybe the size too, but maybe not. Maybe we could do this one will control. Yeah, let's do this one controls the size. So this will go what? Slower. Or hold on, give me 1 second. Let's go actually that way. So this is actually going to go up because then, yeah. And then we can have it also control the speed and bring it down. So this one is controlling grains. We'll call it grains, or we'll call it grain amount, right? And this one is timing. You don't have to give them like exact names, right? You could just like give them a vibe. Like this one's controlling timing pretty much. And this one is like grain amount. But watch what starts to happen. I'm also going to have this. People don't need to know that it's also controlling an effect, right? So we can just bring this up a little bit. So just make it a little bit more aggressive, not too much. Over here on the master, I am going to bring up this to like 100. Bring this down a little bit, get rid of some of the highs. And then the threshold, just make sure nothing goes over like 4. Fast attack, faster release, something like that. And now watch what starts to happen when we start to mess with this XY. It's going to get really cool. Okay, I'm going to take stretch off of the modulation because it was kind of doing a little bit too much. I'll just go with timing for the size. Now let's reverse it. And then let's bring this up a little bit. And we can turn this up. And now go over here and start to mess with this actual full XY. Let's see what we can get. That's kind of going crazy. Give me 1 second. Let me add like another sound in here. Let's get a pad. Can go in here. Turn this down too. Oh, hold on. This XY crossover is crazy. This is why I love Portal, bro. I told you. Okay, so what I like to do when I find like a perfect positioning like that is I'll save the preset with that positioning, and then I'll also save it without it, right? So when people load it up, they can have like, I don't know, have it be like the same name, right? So if I call this preset 1, it would also be preset 1.2 or something, right? And the other preset would just be these knobs. Hopefully I can get these back. Just turned all the way down so it's like the normal sound so people can come in here and mess with it. But then I'll have like 1.2, which is like, oh, these are the best settings, you know what I'm saying? Okay, so then finally when you go to save your presets, all you got to do is click right here, and then you're going to be brought into the user part, right? So they are going to just save into user, or you could just start off by saving them into a folder. Just save it into the user folder. leave it there. I think that's why my whole other bank is in here, and then I dragged it into another folder. So save it into user, then actually go into this folder or group over here inside Portal, inside of presets on your computer, create the new folder, right? So I don't remember what we called it. We called it like future bank, I think. And then into user here, just copy it. So Control C, or if you're on a Mac command or whatever it is, in the future bank, Control V, right? Then you have to reopen Portal. So we'll just delete this and go into Portal, and our new one should be there. Future bank, yeah, digital mad right here. So it did pop up, and it's right there. I don't know, I can't remember, but I do remember that happening a while back when I was creating that bank, and that's just the way I did it. Saved them all into user, and then copied them over into this, and then you add the artwork to that folder as well, and it will pop up in here. I'm stretching a lot in this video, bro. I've been sitting here for like 2 hours. Anyways, Portal tutorial is done. That was a very fun and stressful video to make. Hopefully I explained it, made it make sense. You understand Portal and you're able to create your own Portal bank, or at least your own presets if you want to. Really appreciate you guys watching this video. I know it's extremely long, so if you're at this part of the video, you're probably into sound design and you're willing to sit here for 40 minutes and hear me talk about Portal. If you're interested in my Portal bank, I'll have a link to it in the description. The Strange Portal bank, crazy presets in there, all designed from scratch. Link to that in the description. Till the next video, peace.